What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to a live stream from your very own Shappy Gaming, and today we are going to be talking about a couple of really important topics in Rise of Kingdoms that I thought I would just make a stream about because it makes more sense to have a long conversation about it than to just go ahead and make a video. Today, we're going to be talking about the two new commanders that are coming to Rise of Kingdoms. That's Stephen III and John Hunyadi. But we're also going to be talking about Siege at large in Rise of Kingdoms, what it is today, what it could be, and all of that. So let's jump into it. Awesome. So welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Let's talk about Stephen III and John Hunyadi and what they actually are. So today, we're going to be looking at their skills and who the potential pairings could be, and then we're going to be talking about Siege holistically, because I think that there is a lot of different things going on, and if you watch Mr. Siege, he'll tell you how great Siege is, and if you watch OmniArc, he'll say Siege is pretty good too, and everyone's giving you slightly different opinions. My goal today is to actually break down if Siege is viable in Rise of Kingdoms, if you should be using it, and what the most practical application of it is going to be, because I feel like there's different stories that everyone is telling. So let's start with these new commanders to understand if they are going to be meta changing or game breaking or all of that, because I think that's a big question everyone's wondering. So first things first, let's start with Stephen. He came out a couple days ago, and his talents are engineering, versatility, and skill. I have read through his skills already, but I'll read through them with you guys just so you can get a reading on exactly what I'm thinking. So first things first. This commander, his first skill is Victor of Vaslui, and the rage costs 1,000, that's pretty standard, but the target type is single. Immediately, I'm not that big of a fan of single target commanders, especially when they're ranged. When we got Gonzalo, his skills were kind of crazy because he just dealt a ton of damage, so we'll see what this guy can do. Now, the current targets of this commander's troop takes range direct damage, love that, and it's a damage factor of 800 or 1500 if the target is within melee range. Melee range makes me nervous, right? Because when you're using Siege and you're using ranged combat, realistically, you're going to be parking your march out of melee range, right? You're going to be either across a river, you're going to be behind everyone else's troops on a flag, and I have mixed feelings about that, but you're typically not going to be within melee range, so just keep that in mind. If you are, you're going to have problems. Now, the enemy will take ranged additional damage every second for 2 seconds with a damage factor of 200 or 350 if the target is within melee range. Again, you see this coming in. This is kind of a common theme between these two commanders. And the march is inflicted with the exposed effect for 2 seconds. So we see another effect coming into the game. We have Mighty Healing, we have Exposed, we have Smite. All of these different things continue to make Rise of Kingdoms more interesting. And so it's very neat seeing how everything comes together. And I do remember when they first introduced Mighty Healing, they were like, this is going to be the new archer skill. It does look like this guy has Mighty Healing, and we also have ranged commanders that have Smite. So I'm really hoping for that Cavalry Smite commander sooner rather than later. Now, whenever this commander launches a ranged basic attack against an exposed troop, it mighty heals itself for a large portion of its slightly wounded units. But that healing factor is only 300, which honestly is not very high. I would hope for a higher healing factor, but I do like healing on ranged for a couple reasons. A, if you're ranged, you're parking that march. You're not really planning on moving it around. And so if it can just sit there and heal, that's actually a pretty good setup because you're not going to have to take it back and redeploy that march and get it all set up again. You save time having that march heal. So I'm a fan of the healing. Overall, everything else is kind of meh. I mean, the damage factor is good. 1500 damage factor for melee, but again, you really want to be avoiding melee as a ranged player, so let's look on some of the rest. This commander's siege units gain 35% defense. While not in combat, they also gain 20% march speed. That's fine. I mean, Siege really does need march speed when we talk about getting set up and again, getting back out to the field. that 35% defense is just about on par with some of the other siege commanders and ranged commanders that we have so far. So nothing is incredible, but so far, not too bad. So, okay, we've seen some of his skills there. Let's take a look at the third. This commander's troop takes 15% less ranged counterattack damage. This is nice, because as you guys know, when you have a ranged march and you're attacking units, the main damage that's actually going to hurt you is going to be that counterattack damage, right? You only take damage if you hit something. So that's nice, because range today, that's going to be the number one thing that's whittling you down. Whenever their troop launches a ranged basic attack, it has a 10% chance to gain a 25% bonus to range normal damage dealt for 3 seconds. Now this is interesting, because everything about this commander says skill damage, right? Except for this. Now it's a 10% chance to get a 25% bonus. 25% bonus isn't that much, but it does call out here that it also gives you a damage bonus for, I think, ranged smite damage or ranged combo attack damage. Smite damage we've seen. Combo attack? I don't think we've seen combo attack damage for ranged yet, which makes me wonder if this is hinting at something or if they're just trying to be overt with their details that they're providing for you. All in all, meh. And fourth skill, all men must serve. Whenever this commander's troop launches a ranged basic attack, it has a 40% chance to gain up to 2% attack and loses 0.5% defense for 15 seconds. Usually I love this mechanic. I think it's nice because you're kind of playing off the skills that you really need, and defense is kind of not a big deal. However, I'd rather, I think, just have the raw attack bonus. I don't know. It says it can stack up to 15 times, which means you're going to get up to 30% extra attack from that, and you lose 15% defense, which is really not that big of a deal. In fact, your equipment or your armaments could probably offset that, but I don't really know how much I'm appreciative of that skill. I don't know. Let me know in the chat, guys. What is this a skill you're a fan of? Personally, I'm kind of meh. The next one is Cosmin Forrest, and this is his expertise. This commander's troop deals 10% more ranged skill damage. Okay, so we're back to skill damage now. We had normal attack damage, now we're on skill. Okay. Whenever their troop deals ranged skill damage, it has a 20% chance to deal ranged direct damage to up to 3 enemy troops near the target. Bam! That is the first skill about this commander that I actually really like. Because you like having, when you're in a ranged setup, you're never attacking one march, right? There are 15 different marches attacking a flag. You're sitting behind the flag. This is a big deal because now you have an AoE effect and it's a 20% chance. And it's whenever you deal ranged skill damage. So it's somewhat frequent. It's not the most frequent, but it's somewhat frequent. And that damage factor of 500 isn't bad. But the cooldown kills me. Cooldown of 10 seconds is not the best. That kind of sucks. And it really kind of takes away from the expertise here, if I'm being honest. I mean, I guess there's a question of will your skill be proccing more frequently than every 10 seconds, which I think it will be, which kind of means you're only going to deal this AoE damage every other skill, which immediately tells me that Gonzalo is probably going to be the better commander than this guy. So that's Stephen III. Let me know in the chat what you guys think. Is this guy any good? Is he meta changing? Personally, my read on him, not really anything meta changing, right? He adds a couple new mechanics to the game, but nothing that really blows me away that makes me say, I need to go invest in a Siege March right now. Now, maybe that's just because of the way I play, but that's just my read on the situation, and we are going to compare these commanders to the other commanders that we have today. And before I do that, thank you, John Wicked, for the super chat. I so appreciate you. You are an absolute legend. Wow, that helps me out a ton. Thank you. Very cool. So now let's go take a look at this new commander that they just released today. Odds are pretty high you guys haven't seen him. His name is John Hunyadi, and he is engineering, versatility, and support. Now, immediately when I saw these two commanders, I think they need to be paired together. We're going to validate that today, but I think that you're probably going to want to have skill as the primary talent, and you're probably going to be running the previous commander, right? You're going to be running Stefan as primary if you're running these two together. That's just my read on it, but let me know in the chat. What do you guys think? I'm also going to start a poll now. So if you are watching this live, you can actually participate here. We're going to start a poll, and we're going to ask whether you guys are running Siege today or not. Because I do think that this is a interesting question. I tried to get other people to join the stream with me. And the majority of the people I spoke to said, I don't have strong opinions on range combat, or I don't run range today. And candidly, I don't either. So I'm wondering if people are running range combat today. So there we go. We just started the poll. Let me know if you guys are running a ranged march today. Now, on to the new guy, John Hunyadi. Engineering versatility support. I already said I think you probably want a skill commander as your primary, so John's going to be your secondary. Let's remember that as we read through this. He deals ranged direct damage to a target troop, damage factor 900, but 1600 if the target is not within melee range. That's a big deal. Almost all of our range commanders up until now have said it is a lower damage factor if you are not in melee range, and if you are in melee range, you deal more damage. This guy is the opposite. At least that's what it reads like. Now, if Lilith comes out and they say, hey, we had a big typo, it was a mistake, we didn't mean to say that, we could talk about it. But I've read through his skills, and there is some consistency here that really makes me wonder if this guy is actually for ranged, and if a commander gets close to you, you really don't want to be using him. But to be honest, if you're using ranged, you're probably going to die anyways, right? They chase down the ranged marches. So that's an interesting change that we've seen from the other ranged commanders. And for the next 3 seconds, this commander deals 20% additional range skill damage. So this immediately tells me I'm not putting him behind either of my smite commanders that I have today for range. So that, again, narrows the playing field as to who I'm going to be using. I'm not going to be using Gaja, and I'm not going to be using Cordoba. I'm probably going to be using Margaret, Babur, or I'm going to be using Steven. And we just spoke about Steven, and I think Steven has a lot of good things going for these two. So let's check out the next skill. I do like that skill damage there. That's pretty good. There's also a bit of a confusion here in the previews, so we'll see. If it is the opposite of what I said, then I'm going to be really bummed, because I do want to see range get some bonuses when they're not in melee range rather than when they are in melee range. Next skill, Sword in the Sky. This commander's units gain 30% attack, and while their troop is in ranged mode, it gains 15% faster. So here's the thing. 30% attack, not that great, right? We just saw that with the other commander, so let's go back here. With Steven, you're getting 35% defense. And you have the potential on his next skill to get up to 30% attack. So what's that about? That this guy's skill is 30% attack. He should be 35. I don't know. Just my opinion. I think that they kind of screwed him on the skills. But this next one is a big deal. When in range mode, you gain rage 15% faster. Because this means you're going to be proccing your active skill more frequently, which is a big deal, right? You're going to be dealing more damage. You're going to have more of an impact. And that excites me. That excites me a lot. I think that's going to be a really big deal for this commander. And I think it's probably one of the best reasons as to why you might want to use him, because I think that he's probably going to benefit a lot from that. So that's just my initial take on this commander, because I do want you guys to keep in mind that every commander has different benefits. So, okay, now let's look at the next skill. Whenever the commander's troop uses an active skill, it has a 20% chance to deal extra range direct damage to its current target. Damage factor 300. Chance to trigger is increased to 40% if the target is not within melee range. See, they did this again. They are playing off the not within melee range on this commander, which I love, right? If they take advantage of this for range, they are making range significantly stronger. I'm not saying I'm running it, but I am saying that they're making it significantly stronger, which is a big deal. On to Night of the Noon Bell. This commander's troops deal 40% more damage to troops with less than 50% units remaining. I love this for ranged. 40% more damage is kind of like the Belisarius skill. In fact, I'll probably pull that up just because I'm curious. I think Belisarius is 50%, but 40% more damage is nice, especially if you think about altar scenarios, right? Where you have marches that aren't dead, but they're dying and they're getting attacked. This is handy, and this is an all damage bonus. So if you get skill damage to pop while this is active, that's a big deal. And so this is really, really, really impactful if you have someone attacking you. I like this skill. I think that they should use this effect more. They don't really use it enough. Onto his expertise. Boosted skill, Shield of Belgrade. Whenever this commander's troop uses an active skill, it has a 40% chance to deal extra range direct damage to its current target and gain 30% rage. This is Luce in ranged. What do I mean by that? You're gaining 30 range here. You're gaining rage 15% faster here. This is like having the horn. So he's dealing his skill damage way faster than any other commander probably in the game. We'll take a look at Luce in a second here, but probably more frequently than any other commander in the game. Another reason why I really like him. Compared to Steven, I'm thinking John is much more of a must-have commander. Just my initial view on him. To be honest, I'm wondering if you're going to want to pair him with Margaret, but let's actually jump in game now and talk about the different pairings that you have available to you, and let's confirm some of my suspicions as it pertains to some of these other commanders. So let's hide that. Let's hide that. Let's open up Rise of Kingdoms. So here we are. We're in game. Let's go all the way down to Belisarius to confirm my previous suspicion. This commander's troops deal 25% more damage to troops with less than 50% units remaining. So this buff is even more dramatic than the Belisarius skill. And the one thing I want you guys to focus on, when you are in Heroic Anthem KVK and you have this Belisarius skill, every single person you know is using this skill. There's a reason for that. It is really, really impactful when you're in combat. And having 40% more damage, that's 40% more range damage, 40% more basic attack damage, 40% more counterattack damage, that's going to be a really substantial thing. Especially if you're targeting these marches when you're in range, why wouldn't you? Look for something that's half dead and target that. I would do that every single time. So that's a big deal. Let's compare that rage regen to Luce because I'm really curious. So we go over here. Whenever their troop launches a basic attack, it has a 25% chance to launch one basic attack worth of rage. Someone let me know in the chat what one basic attack worth of rage is. I think it's pretty substantial, but I have to double check what that is. I don't remember off the top of my head. I'm counting on you guys in the chat and the comment section to cover me, but I'm thinking between the 15% rage regen speed and the rage bonus you're getting with that expertise, I'm thinking it's probably pretty comparable to what we're talking about with Luce. And if it's 86%, 86 rage, so that's a big deal, right? That's 86 rage. If we go to our new guy here, not Steve, go over here, you've got 30 rage. So it's half as good, but you have the 15% rage bonus. So this guy's really strong. He's really strong. As a range commander, the other thing you have to remember, you're not actually touching this guy. So he's going to be most of the time at almost full health dealing damage to you. So I'm a big fan of this John commander. I don't know if you need to max the other one, but John is looking really good to me as a secondary. So let's take a look at who we can pair him with as a primary. So we have a few ranged commanders that exist in game today. So the first that we're going to look at, because I want to rule him out, is going to be Gonzalo. Gonzalo's a smite guy. He deals ranged smite damage. He's arguably, in my opinion, the best smite commander and range commander that we have. Not smite individual. Obviously, we have William Wallace in the check. But he is probably, if I were going to make a ranged march today, I would probably go with Gonzalo and Gajamada. I think these two have really good synergy. They've got the smite damage. And I'm a big fan of that setup. I really like smite damage when we're talking about these different commanders. I think that Gonzalo and Gajamada have a really good synergy between the two. And the question that you should be asking when you see these new commanders come out is, are they going to be good enough to replace this duo? In any other scenario, I think that you're going to have a hard time, because this duo is probably the only one for 90% of players that you're going to be considering having in your 5 to 7 march setup. I have not heard of anyone running multiple range marches in their 5 to 7 march setup, except for Mr. Siege. The gross majority of players will have 1 march. So you have to remember, even if this new commander looks awesome and amazing, is he going to be better than Gonzalo? I don't know. So let's look. Gonzalo's damage factor is 2,400 smite. 2,400. That is more than almost any other commander in the game. And it's an AoE. Okay. Well, let's look at some of his other skills. Shappy, maybe you're just being overly generous. Siege unit attack bonus. 20%. So that 20%, kind of meh. I mean, it's not the best buff, right? Both of the other commanders we just saw had a better attack bonus. You had a 30% chance with John. You had a 35 with Steven. So, not the best. You do get a universal siege unit march speed bonus, which is nice. When we looked at, I think it was Steven, your march speed bonus was conditional upon the fact that you're not in combat. Well, if you're using Gonzalo, you may actually be able to run away, depending upon who you're running from, right? Probably infantry and archers. Cavalry will catch you. And your range smite damage bonus is 10%. Now, 10% for Gonzalo is an all damage bonus. That's really important to remember. None of the other commanders that we've looked at so far have an all damage bonus. You have a ranged normal attack bonus. You have a ranged skill damage bonus, but you don't have anything for all damage. Now, we do have some commanders, spoiler alert, that one, who does have an all damage bonus. Now, he also has this skill, which I personally am a big fan of. Smite, siege unit defense bonus of 10%. It's fine. Not great. Whenever he uses an active skill, it has a 50% chance to gain 1 stack of Vigilant effect. This effect can stack up to 1 time, and its duration resets whenever it gains another stack. Whenever their troop is hit with a basic attack, it will consume 1 stack of Vigilant to deal ranged smite damage to the attacker. Now, I believe a basic attack can include counterattack damage. You guys let me know in the chat, but I do believe it can. And that ranged smite damage is going to be nice. And you're going to get that bonus here from your smite damage bonus. And that can go up to 200. And you disarm them. And disarming them is the only scenario, and there's a lot of commentary. I spoke to someone earlier today who had a really hot take on ranged combat, and I'm going to share it with you guys because I think this is general consensus. And I'm going to paraphrase. Siege is not good and not helpful for the other players. It's situational only, or for cheap players who only want good trades and aren't willing to dive into the murder balls themselves. This makes it so others have to do the real work in KVK, whereas these folks just get cheap KP. It's kind of like cheeseburgering from a distance. I'm not going to say who said that because I'm protecting their identity. But I do think that with Gonzalo, you actually do have the potential to help everyone else who's fighting, which I like. A lot of these other ranged commanders don't give you that ability. And with these new commanders, I'm still not seeing that come. And that's a problem for me. Now, this commander's troop takes up to, I think that's 20% less ranged counterattack damage. Now, we already spoke about the fact that the number one thing that whittles down your marches is going to be ranged counterattack damage. Whenever this troop is hit with a basic attack, it has a 10% chance to gain a 20% bonus to ranged normal damage. Note, ranged normal damage is all damage for Gonzalo. Full stop. It includes counterattack damage. It includes everything else. I don't even need to read the expertise. Gonzalo is not being replaced by either of these two new commanders. So if you're thinking that you're going to run one of them and swap out Gonzalo Gajamada, I think you're wrong. because the synergy these two commanders have is so enormous that even though the new guys are cool, the smite damage is going to be generally more viable, and the all damage bonus you're getting across both of these commanders, right? Because you're getting a ranged normal damage bonus from Gajamata and his primary skill, is going to make it so it is even more drastically important. The other reason why I really like this pair, Gajamata is the only commander for Siege that I've seen so far that has any dramatic health bonus. So he's got March speed. You've got up to 30% March speed when you run these two together, and you've got 40% health. So I really like that. And again, here you go again. When in range mode, this commander deals 3% more ranged normal damage, up to 15%. Ranged normal damage includes smite. This is an all damage bonus. So Gajamata is just super OP. Super OP, especially when we talk about pairing him with Gonzalo. I don't think these two new commanders are going to make that much of a difference when it comes to these two as the primary meta for ranged. Mr. Siege said he might join, or he'll leave comments in this video, so I'm curious to hear his take. I don't think Gonzalo Gaja is getting replaced. So we've established that you're not running either of the two new commanders with Gonzalo or Gajamata. We've also established that personally, I am not the biggest fan of Steven. I just don't think he's that good. I think that John is going to be the one commander that if you're using range today and you're using range skill damage, you might want to bring him in. The question is going to be, who are you bringing him in with? He has an attack bonus, so you need someone who's going to offset that. He's a nuking commander, which we like, so you're going to need someone who can take advantage of that. He has the all damage bonus, and he has a little bit of AoE. You're going to want to buff that damage factor from the AoE effect. So that's what we're looking for as we try and find a pair for this commander. So who could it be? Let's take a look at the two that I'm considering the most. First is going to be Margaret. Margaret was a free commander in the same way Ragnar's free. You guys know exactly what I'm talking about if you've been playing the game. Give me a little like smiley emoji in the chat if you know what I'm talking about here. She's got a pretty good setup. She deals 25% more ranged normal damage, which is nice, right? That could work for Gonzalo or any of them, but realistically, it's fine. Whenever their troop launches a ranged basic attack, it deals extra ranged damage factor of 600. That's pretty good, because the majority of your attacks are going to be ranged basic attacks. So this is for 3 seconds, you are dealing essentially a damage factor of 1800, which is pretty good. The problem is it's reduced by 50% if not within melee range of the target, which realistically you're not going to be, let's be honest. She does get an attack bonus, which is not really what we wanted. And she gets a March speed bonus of 20%, which is good. Between the two of them, what does that bring our March speed bonus up to? Let's just double check. That brings your March speed bonus. He doesn't have one. He does not have a March speed bonus. That's going to be a problem. If you're running him, you're probably going to get killed, which is fine, right? It's all good. You just need someone to offset that slightly. But that's something really important that you're going to want to keep in mind. He doesn't have a March speed bonus. So whoever you pair him with is going to be the one who has to carry you for your March speed. She does have a 20% bonus, which is nice. That's more than some of the other folks. So that's not a bad deal. Let's take a look at her other skills. You've got a ranged skill damage bonus of 20%. We like that. That works with John. He has a ton of skill damage, so we like that. He also has a 30% chance to reduce the target's March speed by up to 30%. This one isn't that great, if I'm being honest. However, if we're looking at John's skill that takes advantage of a wounded march, odds are pretty good that that wounded march is going to start running away. If you do debuff their march speed, there is the potential for you to get a lot more damage on that particular march. So there's a little bit of synergy there. Now, one thing that really turns me off about Margaret is that she's a support commander, not a skill damage commander. And while you do have this talent, which helps with slowdown, and you also have this talent which gives you extra rage, which we like, especially for him, because again, he's a rage machine. He's firing that active skill a ton. You also have this skill. Maybe support could work. Maybe. I don't know. I think it's possible. I personally do think I would much prefer to have a skill damage commander paired with John. That's just my first impression. I think that's true. And sure, attack is totally a more valuable stat when it comes to ranged commanders, because I agree attack is going to dictate how much normal attack damage and skill damage you're dealing. Health is going to be important for that lasting power, though, and that's what I mentioned earlier. If you have higher health, then that mighty healing doesn't really matter quite as much, right? I imagine troops with higher health and troops with mighty healing and no health bonus probably will last just about the same amount of time. Just my initial impression. Margaret does have a 5% all damage bonus. That's nice. That's going to help you with that skill damage. You're also getting another skill damage bonus over here. So Margaret could work. She also has a defense reduction of 40%, which again, if we look back at Gonzalo, and what I really like about him is you have a debuff. So you have two big debuffs here. You've got a defense reduction of 40%, and you have a march speed reduction of 30%. And if you're attacking a march that has under 50% units, you're dealing 40% more damage. Really, because of this, it's 45% more damage. That's not a bad synergy. You could run Margaret as primary and run him as secondary, or vice versa. They're both using the support tree. I would probably go with her as primary, though, I think. I think I probably would. Her expertise is not bad. She gives you a healing factor, which is going to give you a little bit of that lasting power that we were just talking about. It's not mighty healing, but it's a 500 healing factor, which honestly is probably just about as good. Let's look at Bob War, because he's the last one that I think everyone is probably going to consider for pairings. And I'm also going to talk about Siege holistically, because I read that message earlier in that hot take. I have my own opinions, and I'm going to bring them up for you. Bob War immediately deals a ton of damage. It's single target, which is my favorite, right? But it's 2,400 if in melee range, and it's half that if you're in range mode, which is still pretty good. He deals 15% attack bonus, 15% defense bonus, and his range normal damage bonus is about 10%. It's fine. It's not great, but he does have that balance that we're really looking for. And to the comment that I got here saying attack is going to be more valuable, if you have 30% attack and then you have this 15% attack, that's putting you up to 45%. And again, you have to remember that equipment's going to come into play. Now, if we look at our engineering equipment, let's double check what we can get here. If we look at our engineering equipment, you're getting attack for the most part. Attack and march speed. You get some health here. Your set bonuses are going to be giving you defense and skill damage. Or smite damage. Again, Gonzalo. So you're already getting a lot of attack and defense here from these. What you're really not getting a lot of is going to be health. You're only getting health from your boots, or from your, I think this is the chest piece. No, these are the pants. Great job, Shabby. So that's not bad, right? I do like that attack bonus that you're getting. So maybe Bob War's a pair. Personally, I don't know. So let's double check his next skills. When in range mode, this commander takes 10% less normal damage. We like that. They'd also take 10% less range normal damage. Not sure what that means. And deals 10% more counterattack damage. That's interesting. Whenever their troop launches a ranged basic attack, has a 10% chance to deal extra damage to the target, damage factor of 500. So this plays off of Margaret's skill that we also saw, which does the same thing, which we like. I like having that extra damage factor because range is going to be there for a long time. You also have a health bonus here, and a defense bonus, and an all damage bonus. Personally, looking at the commanders available to me, I think that you're probably going to be wanting to pair Bob War with John. That's going to be the new skill damage pair that you're going to want to run, because you have a nuker and then you have a nuker supporter. John has all of those extra skills that's going to make your nuke damage go through the roof. So I like that duo. I don't think you need Steven. And realistically, guys, you're probably not starting ranged from scratch if you're looking at these commanders. If you're looking at these new commanders, you have a ranged march, and your ranged march is probably Bob or Margaret. In which case, you're looking for a meaningful upgrade from Margaret. I think that John gives that to you. I don't think you need Steven. I also don't think you should invest in Babur, Margaret, John, or Steven. I think you should invest in Gonzalo Gaja if you're going to use ranged. That's my recommendation. Babur primary, use the attack tree. Now let's talk about range combat holistically, because that was the goal of this stream. What does range combat look like in Rise of Kingdoms going forward? They've added these range commanders after no one thought they were going to. No one thought they were going to add more range commanders. But they did. They're not meta changing. I don't think they are. We'll see when testing comes out. I probably won't be doing testing. Someone else will. Probably Mr. Siege. But does this mean that everyone needs to start using a ranged march? I don't think so. And the reason I don't think so is that today, the gross majority of fighting that's happening is with melee units, cavalry, infantry, archers. And those melee units are continuing to get stronger. Philip just came out. Ragnar just came out. These are majorly powerful units. In a melee fight between a ranged combat and a individual unit, I don't think that the ranged combat is going to be totally viable. And I think that's going to be a really important aspect of this. Today, and I know that person said it and they were being a little tongue-in-cheek, your ranged combat is not on the front lines. It's never going to be on the front lines. I don't think that's realistic. So you need to have those other marches. They're way more important. And to be honest, I think I need my 5 melee marches more than I need a ranged march. And I think this is universal for everyone playing Rise of Kingdoms today. The majority of people who are going to run range maybe will run it as a 5th or a 6th march. And to be honest, with Philip coming into the game, you now have more competition because you need Philip in your marches. I think Philip is absolutely going to change the meta. I have no hesitations about it. He needs to be in your setup. So you're now competing with range there. You can run Honda Philip. You can run Trajan Philip. And I think leadership has really been slept on. The other thing that makes me a little concerned is Lilith just added this king skill, which makes it so you can choose one of your kingdom's troops to act as an inspiring troop. All of your kingdom's melee troops that are within a certain range of the inspiring troop, when the skill is cast, take 20% less range damage and deal 50% more range counterattack damage for the next 5 minutes. And this is a cooldown of 45 minutes, which means you could use it in multiple KVK fights. So Lilith is even saying, we're debuffing range. So at this point in the game, should you be investing in a ranged march? I don't think so. I don't think that range is going to be the meta. I don't think you should invest in a ranged march. And I don't think that the ranged marches available to us, with the exception of maybe Gonzalo Gajamada, are meta changing. And I do think that there is, a little bit of a take here. Thank you, Lambo, for the super chat. I appreciate you, man. 4 legendary commanders in a month does really hurt. I'm not a fan of it. My gold heads are rough. We'll show you those in a sec. I do think that there's a problem. I think that these range commanders, people don't have gold heads saved up, right? I think that they are not going to be the meta. I don't necessarily think you should be investing in them. I think they have a setup time, and I do think that despite the fact that you get kill points with him, and I do like the term cheeseburgering from a distance. I love that. I'm a big fan of that. I do think that there is going to be a problem here, where if you're sitting in the back with 5 range marches, and everyone else is fighting on the front lines, taking more severely wounded, dying on flags, filling the flag, that's not cool, right? We fight as a kingdom. If you go ahead and you just run ranged, you're not helping your kingdom. And that's not a bash on Mr. Siege. His whole thing is siege. I'm here for it. But you're probably not helping your kingdom as much as someone who's stuffing flags or is using their other marches to fight on the front lines. And again, without those frontline marches, your range marches are done, because they are what enable those range marches to do well. So what does this mean? I think that ranged for minimal investment is not a bad deal. If you want to pick up Cordoba, you want to pick up Gajamata, you're a low spender or free to play, there is a space for you. So that's not bad. But if you're just using range for range beyond that, I'm not the biggest fan. Now, there's an interesting suggestion that just came in, which is think about artifacts. So let's do that, because I do think that if you are creating a ranged march, artifacts could be important. So let's just pull them up. He said, read Philip's second skill and think about it. So, for Philip. Yes. So Dav, I actually brought that up, and I do need to debunk this. Lilith has said that they are not going to enable you to add all your different skill effects from Philip. If you guys remember, Philip has a skill that allows you to deal a ton of damage. And you can actually, it's kind of cheeky, you can actually stack it today as you can with Joan. They're not enabling that for Philip from an artifact standpoint. So I can actually show you guys exactly what that's referring to. That's this skill. Their cavalry units gain 35%. Yeah, they're not enabling that artifact, unfortunately, which is a bummer. But it does make me wonder, if we do take a look at some of these commanders, is there a scenario in which you can use an artifact to make the range commanders useful for non-range combat? I don't know. Has anyone tried that? Mr. Siege, have you tried that? Because I'm wondering if you could be running, Gonzalo as a smite commander with infantry. Or you put an infantry commander behind Gonzalo, right? Maybe you put Luce behind him. Just a thought. But generally speaking, I'm thinking that you're probably not going to be running a ranged march. I don't think they're the future of Rise of Kingdoms. If I were you, save your gold heads and invest in Philip. I hope that this video has been helpful. I hope it's provided some much needed insight into these 2 new commanders and my take on whether you should be investing in them or not. Personally, I would skip Stefan for sure. I would go for John if you're going to use a skill damage based ranged commander. Realistically, just invest in Philip and invest in Ragnar. I think they're going to pay off better in the long run. I hope you guys have enjoyed. If you have, drop a like on this stream or the video if you're watching back in time. I hope it's helpful. And if you haven't already, do hit that subscribe button right over there, bottom right-hand corner. Helps me out a ton, and it helps make sure you do not miss any of my content. Thank you all.